What's going on, and welcome to Pro Football Today right here on SportsGrid. My name is Tom Vecchio. For the next hour, I will be alongside Joe Lisi. We'll be going over everything that happened yesterday in the two conference championship games, a look ahead to the Super Bowl, and then, of course, plenty of news and notes from around the league. Joe, let's get right into things. How you're doing, thoughts on yesterday's games, at least from an overview perspective.
Yeah, Tom, I mean, the Super Bowl is set. Congrats to Seattle and the Patriots. Both games were entertaining. They went right down to the wire into the fourth quarter. I think from the marketing perspective and the hype, you couldn't ask for anything else for the NFL, right? They got exactly what they wanted, games that were dialed in from start to finish. Now, the New England game was a little bit more methodical due to the weather, due to Jarrett Stidham being at the helm for Denver. But it still went down to Drake May and New England winning their ninth road game and deserving to win that matchup. And on the flip side, Sam Darnold answered the critics. 346 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and they dominate the LA Rams yet again in back-to-back meetings. Sam Darnold has erased all of the negativity that was surrounding him last year, and we're set for a great Super Bowl rematch of both the Seahawks and Patriots.
Now, certainly the teams took different paths to get here between the NFC and the AFC. When it comes to the AFC overall, we saw the Pats not having the first round bye. They're at home for 2 consecutive games. They take care of business against the Chargers, the Texans. They go on the road, albeit it wasn't the matchup that we were intending because no Bo Nix with Denver. And then Seattle, they had the bye. They took care of business in their first round matchup against another divisional opponent with the 49ers, and then take care of business, like you said, against the Rams yesterday. And, Joe, this is the matchup that we truly want to see, to your point. And, the overall notion that the Pats didn't play the toughest schedule to get throughout the regular season, and then really didn't play the toughest schedule in the playoffs. Do you put any stock into that? Because frankly, you play who's on your schedule, and if you take care of business, you deserve to be there.
I agree. And again, to win 9 games on the road, especially the one yesterday in that Denver mile-high environment, I mean, with everything in the middle of the field in terms of the chips, they stepped up. And again, it is the NFL. Anything can happen on any given Sunday. You look at some of the teams that were knocked off. Philadelphia got knocked off by the Giants this year. Anything can happen. So you can't take away from what Mike Vrabel and the Patriots have done. Yes, they were maybe the benefit and had the benefit of an easier schedule in the regular season, but they knocked off LA in dominating fashion. They were able to move the football against one of the best defenses and front sevens in the AFC and conference in Houston, put up 20-plus points and shut down CJ Stroud in that offense, and then go on the road. Even though it was a backup quarterback, they didn't play their best offensively, and they still grinded out a road win. That's a testament to Mike Vrabel. He stepped up in his second stint now as a head coach, and he brings back the prominence and dominance maybe of the New England Patriots. So it was a dominant year for both Mike Vrabel and Robert Kraft for the New England Patriots.
So the matchup is set between the Seahawks and the Patriots. We have a couple weeks before we get there, but the game lines are out. We'll, of course, get into that plenty today, and of course, over the next 2 weeks, diving into that, and plenty of props, as we know. But we're not only focusing on the games, we're also going to be focusing in on the news and notes from around the league, and there have been some major moves across the league over the past few days and the past few weeks, specifically when it comes to coaching, Joe. The most recent coaching hire was Mike McCarthy for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was officially hired over the weekend. We have still 4 vacancies when it comes to the remaining teams. 6 of them have been filled. Initial thoughts when it comes to Mike McCarthy stepping in for Mike Tomlin as the new Steelers head coach?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's an upgrade, Tom. I mean, Mike McCarthy does come with a winning pedigree, but you look at the last 2 years in both Green Bay and obviously Dallas, and they failed to live up to expectations. And I actually believe this team is a little bit more older than maybe what the organization believes. I believe it's a major rebuild for them to get back to dominance and challenge for an AFC championship. I know Aaron Rodgers potentially might be reunited with Mike McCarthy. But again, is it any different than what we saw with Mike Tomlin? Yeah, Mike McCarthy could get the team potentially to 9-8 and 10-7, but he's not a defensive guru the way potentially Mike Tomlin was. And again, his teams failed when he had the quarterback and when he had the talent around them, and he couldn't win and get to a championship game, or more importantly, a Super Bowl. And that's the biggest thing when you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Can the new head coach get you past where Mike Tomlin got you in the playoffs? Yeah, McCarthy can get you to the playoffs, but I don't think he can get them to a Super Bowl, and that's the biggest thing.
Now, there are still 4 openings around the league for coaching: the Bills, the Browns, the Cardinals, and the Raiders. Of these 4 teams, which do you think is the most enticing? Because I think the obvious answer is the Bills, but knowing that a coach could step into the Raiders with some of the talent that they have with Bowers and Genty, and then having the first overall pick, there's at least something to be said about starting the rebuild and having all the chips in your corner.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And assuming that they take Fernando Mendoza with the #1 overall pick and don't potentially trade it away, you could have the big three, right? You have a dominant tight end, you have the running back, and you have the star potential quarterback. And all you need is the right head coach to coach up the talent and mentor it. But it is the Las Vegas Raiders. They're a losing organization. And when you just look at the head coaches that they're paying now, Pete Carroll, Josh McDaniels, and some of the others, John Gruden, I mean, they're paying, I believe, 5 head coaches that aren't coaching the team. So again, when you look at the body of work and you look at the 4 teams that are left, I actually think the Bills and Arizona potentially are the 2 best jobs ahead of Cleveland and obviously the Las Vegas Raiders.
So there's certainly some moves to be made for those organizations as we approach the end of the quote unquote season. They'll have to fill their head coaches. They move towards the draft and free agency and all of that. But we also can start taking a look at some of the Super Bowl MVP odds that we have already released. Obviously, we're going to see the quarterbacks up at the top with Sam Darnold and Drake May. Of course, Sam Darnold is there because we do see the Seahawks as slight favorites. Drake May right behind him. And then we get into some of the position players with a pretty big drop off to the next New England Patriot and Ramondre Stevenson sitting there at 30-1. Initial thoughts on this market, and or do you have any action on any of these players?
Not action yet, but obviously if we're looking outside both Drake May and Sam Darnold, I think you have to go to JSN that completely took that game over against the LA Rams, had over 150 receiving yards, had 115 and a touchdown in the first half against the LA Rams. He completely can change the landscape of the game. And when you just look at Cooper Kupp's dynamic performance against Cincinnati in the Super Bowl, there was always that potential. If we're looking running backs, I mean, I know we didn't play a role in the playoffs yet. But if we're looking on the New England side, obviously you got to look to Stephon Diggs. He has that household name. But I would look to Travion Henderson. I don't know why he wasn't utilized as much in the game against Denver, but if he is 100% healthy, he is a home run hitter. He does have explosive plays over 50 yards or more this year. I believe 5 of them in a Super Bowl performance where if he is able to potentially rush for close to 100 yards and maybe have multiple touchdowns, he's a player I would key on early on as we break down this matchup for an MVP type of candidate.
Yeah, absolutely. I would back that looking to one of the players that's a little bit longer. I think Ken Walker is going to be just a very popular option. There's nothing wrong with that. What we have seen from him over the past 2 weeks when we're seeing 19 and 19 carries in back-to-back games, obviously, there has been some outlier performances with 100-plus yards and 3 touchdowns, 100-plus combined yards in the most recent game. But Ken Walker at 7-1 certainly does have my eye. I think JSN is also an extremely viable option to go to, knowing they could very easily have 8, 9, 10 receptions, 110, 120 yards. Now, oftentimes we see quarterbacks winning this award, but if there's any matchup to see a non-quarterback win it, it could be one of these with either JSN, Ken Walker, or Steph Diggs. That's where ultimately where I'll be looking. We have plenty coming up right here at Pro Football Today with myself, Tom Vecchio, and Joe Lisi. We're going to dive deep into the games that we just saw over the weekend. We will continue to break down the Super Bowl matchup, and we'll get to, again, more news and notes from around the league because there's still plenty going on. The NFL never sleeps. We have 2 weeks into this matchup, but there's plenty to get to. Stay tuned right here, Pro Football Today and SportsGrid. We'll be back.
This is the fear that we had going on. And the players obviously were paid $10,000 to $30,000 per fix. But what this does is it hits at the core of the identity in the sport, especially in the modern day betting era.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
Basically, my co-host on Game Time Decisions, Josh Doan, is featured so much. And I also want to say this basically now confirms we are the premier Josh Doan network in all of sports media. No way no other show mentions Josh Doan as much as this one. Is that a success? Is that a failure? I don't know, but I think it's true.
Game Time Decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Meanwhile, Charlie Baker of the NCAA has planted his flag. He wants to see the end of prediction markets, and of course is a little bit nervous with all of the different stories that we've heard surrounding sports betting allegations of some folks being corrupt out there and maybe some point shaving. It does make some sense here. I just wonder which of the sports betting operators are going to stand with the NCAA.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
But I remember being 16 in high school, being in my school uniform, long pants and a tie, and I deadlifted 200 kgs, so that's 440 pounds. So so that was I actually have a video of it, so it might get leaked somewhere. Someone might be able to find that one.
We might need to get that one to B-roll the show with.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back, Pro Football Today, right here on SportsGrid. We're going through what we saw yesterday between the AFC and the NFC Championship games. My name is Tom Vecchio. I'm alongside Joe Lisi. Let's dive right into this game, Joe, between the Pats and the Broncos. We know that the Pats come away with the win. They did not cover. It was a 3.5-point spread, so Broncos get the cover. Under was really the play from the beginning throughout the entire game. We know that Stidham was in there instead of Bo Nix. I know a lot of people, or at least I saw the sentiment across social media saying, the what ifs with the Broncos. What if Bo Nix was healthy? What if this? What if that? But really, I look at this game and say the Pats continue to struggle on offense for I'm going to say 2.5 games, at least in the playoffs. We saw Drake May take 5 sacks for the 3rd straight game in the playoffs. And Drake May looked kind of terrible yesterday. That's what my takeaway is from it. It's a great defense in Denver. It's a tough place to play on the road. The weather certainly played a part in all of this, but the Pats won in spite of Drake May. Joe, 86 yards to me is unacceptable from a quarterback in a playoff game.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you look at the performance, Drake May is a good quarterback when obviously the rushing attack is there with both Henderson and Ramondre Stevenson, and he's a product of his environment. Let's be honest. Stephon Diggs is not the same player that he was when he was with Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, and certainly not in his days in Minnesota. He's lost a step. He's not an elite number one. And Kayshon Boutte's a very good wide receiver, but again, lacks overall elite speed to stretch, Patrick Surtain and that secondary over the top. So they stack the box and they try to force Drake May to beat them over the top, and that allowed Denver to be in that game. What I did like about Drake May is, as bad as the passing attack was, still was calm enough to make plays with his legs, extend drives, and obviously that play with the rollout at the end of the game, with the game on the line, he made enough plays to put his team in a position to just close it out. Now, I will say when we look at the matchup against Seattle, this team is going to need a much better effort throwing the football, because we know how active that front seven is with DeMarcus Lawrence and Seattle. You're not going to have easy yards. They haven't allowed a 100-yard rusher now, Tom, in basically it's been 28 games. So we know the rushing attack potentially is not going to be there. That means Drake May is going to have to make plays in the passing attack. How they actually mix it up will be critical if you're back in New England plus the 4.5, and whether they win this game outright.
And that, to your point, looking at Ramondre Stevenson yesterday, what we saw from him, 25 carries for 71 yards. He had a long rush of 12 yards. That means outside of that, he had 24 carries, Joe, for 59 yards. He's averaging under 2.5 yards per carry. And frankly, that type of performance is not good enough versus Seattle. If he's doing that on the ground, it's going to be obvious passing situations for the Pats. It's going to be Drake May and that offensive line, which again, 5 sacks in 3 straight playoff games, combined with the fumbles that we saw against the Texans and the Chargers. That is going to be an issue for Drake May. So to me, when the Pats are going to have success, it's because Steph Diggs does enough. Hunter Henry does enough. Kayshon Boutte, to your point, does enough. No one needs to be a superstar, but they all need to have enough threat on offense to make everyone a well-rounded option in the offense. That's how I see it playing out.
Yeah, you bring up great points. And here's the thing. So you look at the game yesterday, and it's like Josh McDaniels in New England said, you know what? We're confident that we don't have to score a lot of points maybe against Jarrett Stidham because we feel our defense matches up. So they were a little bit vanilla, I felt, on first and second down. Run Ramondre Stevenson, get a couple of yards, run again, and now you're in a manageable third down type of situation, and we'll play the field position type of game, and the defense bailed them out when Stidham made the lateral, right? They're not going to be able to do that against Seattle. So, to your point, if Stevenson is, let's say, getting 59 yards, how do you neutralize that from just attacking Seattle? You can still run the football, but it's when you run it. So if Josh McDaniels has 2 weeks now to prepare, I always say in Super Bowls and big matchups, the team that breaks tendency the biggest ultimately wins the game. So again, you might still want to run it 35 or 40 times, but again, if they're more aggressive maybe on first and second down to open up the run with the passing attack, that's a way that they can neutralize the front seven of Seattle. If you watch the game against the LA Rams, Blake Corum got some yards on misdirection, and they were running the football on passing situations, and that's how they were able to move the football on the ground. New England, Tom, is going to have to do the same thing in this matchup.
Now, if we flip things over to the Denver side, what we saw from them, obviously a clear step back with Stidham at QB compared to when we saw Bo Nix. The offense wasn't efficient. They did score early, and I thought they were going to hang in the game for the majority of it, which they did. They missed a couple field goals. They, passed on a field goal instead of going, they went for it on fourth. They didn't take the field goal. Really, I think that the Broncos have a ton of pieces, and with Bo Nix back next year, potentially with Dobbins back next year, they still have enough on the table, and with Peyton as the head coach, they'll be right in the mix next year. So I don't view this as a bad loss for the Broncos. I just see it as they played a good team, and circumstantially, they were always going to be a step behind.
And they got exposed, right? In that matchup, that's where maybe Jarrett Stidham exposed the team because he wasn't as mobile, let's just say, as Bo Nix. And again, they were up against a very overactive defense that was able to force turnovers and put their team in a position to win. So you're absolutely right. I think when you look at Sean Payton and Denver big picture, they have young playmakers there. Pat Bryant, that got hurt in that matchup again with a hamstring injury, went out. Troy Franklin, that didn't play, will be back. Obviously, if they keep Marvin Mims, he's an explosive playmaker. And obviously, Courtland Sutton, they have the playmakers in the passing attack to potentially challenge for an AFC West championship. And as long as R.J. Harvey is healthy, they have a dynamic potential 1-2 punch at running back. So I think they'll be there. I just think, again, when you look at that matchup for Denver, with the backup quarterback, right, you have to take points. I know you want to be aggressive and you're up 7-0. But when you're in field goal range, you kick the field goal to go up 10-0 and then really put the pressure on Drake May. That was going from 1 score to 2 scores where you still have the advantage of being able to make mistakes. And that's where Sean Payton failed his team in that matchup.
Right. When it's all said and done, Denver didn't play a perfect game. The chips were kind of stacked against them, but the future is bright, to your point. Nix and the rest of the receivers will be back. They have a great offensive line. They have a great defense. To me, this is just about fine-tuning things with Denver, and the future will be up and up from here. We're coming up against the break right now. We have plenty more to discuss when it comes to the Seahawks and the Rams game. We'll, of course, be taking a look again at the Super Bowl odds. Stay tuned right here. Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. We'll be back discussing all the news and notes around the NFL.
This is the fear that we had going on. And the players obviously were paid $10,000 to $30,000 per fix. But what this does is it hits at the core of the identity in the sport, especially in the modern day betting era.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
Basically, my co-host on Game Time Decisions, Josh Doan, is featured so much. And I also want to say this basically now confirms we are the premier Josh Doan network in all of sports media. No way no other show mentions Josh Doan as much as this one. Is that a success? Is that a failure? I don't know, but I think it's true.
Game Time Decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Meanwhile, Charlie Baker of the NCAA has planted his flag. He wants to see the end of prediction markets, and of course is a little bit nervous with all of the different stories that we've heard surrounding sports betting allegations of some folks being corrupt out there and maybe some point shaving. It does make some sense here. I just wonder which of the sports betting operators are going to stand with the NCAA.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
But I remember being 16 in high school, being in my school uniform, long pants and a tie, and I deadlifted 200 kgs, so that's 440 pounds. So yeah, so that was I actually have a video of it, so it might get leaked somewhere. Someone might be able to find that one.
We might need to get that one to B-roll the show in.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
We're back right here, Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. My name is Tom Vecchio. I'm alongside Joe Lisi. We just went through the AFC Championship game between the Pats and the Broncos. Let's flip things over to the NFC between the Rams and the Seahawks. Of course, the Seahawks coming away with another win over the Rams, another high-scoring game, Joe. Really, at the end of the day, as you alluded to in the opening segment, Sam Darnold quieting the critics, going for a fantastic game. They had the balance between the passing and the rushing. Obviously, we saw the Rams punch back with their own effort, with Matt Stafford doing his normal thing at 374 and 3 touchdowns. But just from a top-down perspective, what were your immediate takeaways from this game?
Well, again, I just believe that Seattle was the more physical football team, and I'll just throw this out there. You know, in the middle part of the season, the mantra and the hype surrounding the LA Rams was that not only did they have an elite offense with Matt Stafford, they had one of the top defenses in the NFC, and I think they've been completely exposed now in the back end of the season. Their secondary has gotten abused by multiple teams, including the win that they got over Detroit. I think that really started that defense taking a turn for the worse. And they were exposed by Sam Darnold in Seattle. And when you had the success early on in the first quarter of Kenneth Walker, he was ripping off 10 and 15-yard runs. That really set the mindset for Seattle. But again, when you look at the game play out, and Tom Brady, he was double talking yesterday. I love Tom Brady with the 7 Super Bowls. But when Stafford and the team had the football, up 13-10 with about 1:40 left and timeouts in their back pocket on their own 30-yard line, he was saying you don't get aggressive until the 50-yard line. That's completely false. When you have a trigger man like Matt Stafford, you weren't up 14 or 17 points in the first half. You were only up 3. You gave the football with short to intermediate throws. They went to the flat. That was not the way to attack Seattle at that particular time. That's where they were playing. They didn't attack the seam to get aggressive, and they gave Sam Darnold the football back, and he made him pay with the touchdown to JSN, which really switched the momentum. That was on McVay. That was on the coaching staff. And I'll just say this, a testament to Mike McDonald. I didn't think he'd be this good with this team, but he's got a quarterback that potentially could just erase all the negativity with a Super Bowl win, and they stepped up against the home win against the Rams.
Certainly a great performance from Seattle. As they push towards the Super Bowl, we'll, of course, break down all the options that they have in offense. But when it comes to the Rams specifically, Joe, I think they could, quote-unquote, run it back next year with the offense at least, but the defense to me needs the most work. Also, with an aging Devontae, I think they need another option in the passing game. Do you think that the defense and at least a secondary or tertiary option should be their main focus in the offseason?
Yeah, I mean, they're set at running back, right, with Blake Corum and Kyron Williams. They have basically 4 tight ends, including Davis Allen, and they're all young for the most part. Yeah, they need a slot wide receiver that potentially could take the top. That's a burner. I'm not talking about just a guy that runs a 4.6 and a possession type of receiver. I am talking about elite speed, like Shaheed, but better, right? They don't utilize Shaheed enough. He got 51 yards in that win against the Rams, but a guy that can burn, maybe go a Jeremiah Smith. You want to take Jeremiah Smith if he's available in the draft. Everybody's hyping up Cornell Tate. If Smith is there, it would be a perfect option to go, obviously, with Puka. That's what they need in that offense.
Now, when it comes to the Seattle Seahawks and their offense, obviously we know that the lion's share of targets are always going to be going to JSN, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. But outside of that, what did you take away? Because I liked what we saw from Ken Walker in the passing game specifically. I like that he had some balance in both the rushing work and the passing. But to see Cooper Kupp involved was good. George Halani, the third string running back, who's now the second string running back because Zach Charbonnet was out and is out for the rest of the season. To see him utilized in the passing game is good. But any takeaways which you'll be kind of keying in for the Super Bowl props, which we saw yesterday?
Well, again, we talk about 2 weeks of preparation, right? So you have to try and at least limit JSN. That's easier said than done, but you have to believe from a defensive mindset, that's what New England's going to at least attempt to do and force Darnold to work down the field and not get chunk plays. So if you're Seattle, I love what they did in utilizing Shaheed. Since he's been in the offense, that's basically one of his only catches down the field. He has elite speed. You have to utilize the second and third options, including the tight end. Warner was a non-factor in that matchup. They got the touchdown to Bobo. Again, I still think they could utilize the secondary options in the passing attack for Sam Darnold. But Kubiak has done a fantastic job in creating misdirection, throwing on running downs, and being at an advantage with Sam Darnold and his quarterback. They're going to have to out-game plan New England in this matchup.
If they make Rashid Shaheed more of a consistent threat in the offense with those downfield targets, it will open up the rest of the offense, and that's when they'll be operating at their best. We're coming up against a break right here, Sports Grid. Pro Football Today will be back. We have plenty more to discuss. Stay tuned.
This is the fear that we had going on. And the players obviously were paid $10,000 to $30,000 per fix. But what this does is it hits at the core of the identity in the sport, especially in the modern day betting era.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
Basically, my co-host on Game Time Decisions, Josh Doan, is featured so much. And I also want to say this basically now confirms we are the premier Josh Doan network in all of sports media. No way no other show mentions Josh Doan as much as this one. Is that a success? Is that a failure? I don't know, but I think it's true.
Game Time Decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Meanwhile, Charlie Baker of the NCAA has planted his flag. He wants to see the end of prediction markets, and of course is a little bit nervous with all of the different stories that we've heard surrounding sports betting allegations of some folks being corrupt out there and maybe some point shaving. It does make some sense here. I just wonder which of the sports betting operators are going to stand with the NCAA.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
But I remember being 16 in high school, being in my school uniform, long pants and a tie, and I deadlifted 200 kgs, so that's 440 pounds. So yeah, so that was I actually have a video of it, so it might get leaked somewhere. Someone might be able to find that one.
We might need to get that one to B-roll the show with.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
We're back right here, Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Joe, let's take a look at the market for some coaching vacancies for some teams. Let's take a look at the Buffalo Bills and the market for their next head coach, at least according to Kalshi. Where are you looking in this market? Because to me, this seems like they need a coach that can step in and refine what they currently have. Because as we know, the Bills are a playoff team year in and year out. But in order to get them over that hump, they need a little bit of that magic touch to get them there.
I agree, and I would only look at two people on that list. Something has to be wrong with Joe Brady, why they haven't offered him the job just yet. He's an in-house guy. He's worked with Josh Allen, and all of a sudden, he's basically on the bottom when you look at the odds. I actually think Kubiak would be a great fit with Josh Allen when you think about how he was able to mentor and coach up now Sam Darnold, and now just the emergence of JSN, the passing concepts that we see with Seattle. I mean, I think that would go great with Josh Allen's ability and the rushing attack of James Cook. So again, Kubiak for me, if you're giving me the pick of the litter of that list, I would take Kubiak over anybody else. But I don't believe in Brian Dable. I'm sorry, I just don't. You know, he was 20-40 with the New York Giants, didn't step up, and the team didn't respond on either side of the football. I just can't buy into a coach that basically regressed year after year after year. That's not what I want in Buffalo, Tom.
Right. When it comes to Dable, my overall takeaway is that, yes, he wasn't dealing with the same level of talent on the Giants that we have in Buffalo, at least from a quarterback perspective. We know that Saquon Barkley was with the Giants during that tenure. But there's just not enough of an it factor, essentially, with Dable to have me convinced that they'd be anything more than a first or second round exit from the playoffs, knowing really how strong the AFC is overall. And, you know, speaking of another AFC team that's also looking for a head coach, let's turn to the Cleveland Browns. And Joe, this is a really interesting dynamic because we have seen various head coaches, offensive coordinators pull their name from consideration for the Browns head coaching vacancy. So right now, where are you looking when it comes to Cleveland's next head coach?
Again, you read the reports. Now, supposedly they wanted the written test that they wanted coaches to obviously take prior to the interview process, both supposedly Jesse Minter and now new Chargers offensive coordinator Mike McDaniels, backed out of that. So again, when you look at that list and you say, okay, who's left and what real coach embodies the Cleveland Browns perspective, and think about some of the former head coaches that the Browns have had, Marty Schottenheimer, and you just think of Bill Belichick. You think of defense. I mean, the only one that potentially fits that mold could be Jim Schwartz, an old school type of coach. Is that going to get you to the promised land? Again, the question, Tom, is Shedeur Sanders the answer at quarterback? Because if he is, or they're at least going to roll with him, and you have the situation with Deshaun Watson and all that quarterback room, you need an offensive guy to cultivate that and coach that up. Otherwise, you get a defensive guy, they're not going to be anywhere more than what they are right now, and that's the bottom of the AFC North.
Right. And when it comes to the Browns, the constant question that we heard throughout the season after Shedeur Sanders took over is that there were still reports that the Browns may still be in the quarterback market in the upcoming draft. So we have a team that could potentially be taking a quarterback that obviously has a name brand at this point with Sanders, but is unproven. And then you still have this quarterback question mark with Deshaun Watson due to the contract, essentially, that they are tied to with him. So it has to be an offensive guy. But to know that you are going into that situation with so many question marks and so much uncertainty, this has to be a long road ahead for the Browns. The coach going there has to know that this is not a 1 or 2 year turnaround. And frankly, to me, that means taking a shot on a younger upcoming OC who's willing to prove himself. And frankly, I just don't know who wants to go there and go through that.
Yeah, I mean, again, with Kingsbury, he's on that list. He's a veteran coach, second go round from his days in Arizona, knowing what he did with Jaden Daniels. Or do they view him as just being a potential system guy that doesn't really, that plateaus out and doesn't take an offense to the next level. I mean, if you're Cleveland again, I mean, if you have your choice of the list, you would hope that you could potentially throw a ton of money at Kubiak. But if I'm Kubiak, I'm going into a different organization than a losing one in the Cleveland Browns. So it is interesting. I mean, we see Shieldhouse there at 84%. He's supposedly going to ink the deal within the next couple of days, but that doesn't mean that it's a signed, sealed, and delivered type of situation. This is a dysfunctional organization that has made terrible moves, especially at the quarterback position. And if they're going to be in the market again to fill that void, you really have to think twice if you're an offensive guy going to Cleveland.
Now, when it comes to the coaching hires that have been filled across the league and the new teams, which of these do you think is the best fit, and which of these are you the least excited about?
Best fit has to be Josh Allen. I mean, again, just to work with an MVP type of caliber talent and knowing that, hey, I have James Cook, one of the best running backs that can not only run the football but catch it. I have two tight ends that I could work with in Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. If I get the right type of wide receiver talent, maybe in the draft or through free agency, this offense can cook. That's what I would want to see. I mean, if I'm a veteran coach or a new guy, especially an offensive mind, and I'm Kubiak, I got to be licking my chops to potentially work with Josh Allen. I mean, just the trajectory that I could take the Buffalo Bills to in year number one. Any other job, potentially. Cleveland, we don't know who the quarterback situation is. Arizona, what are they going to do with Kyler Murray, right? Jacoby Brissett isn't the answer. And Las Vegas, you're starting with a rookie quarterback. There's no guarantee that Fernando Mendoza is going to turn out to be this, elite quarterback a la Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels type of, athleticism. I'm not suggesting that he fails. What I'm saying is there's no guarantee. What I know is that Josh Allen, from his body of work and his resume, is one of the most athletic quarterbacks and dynamic quarterbacks, not just in the AFC, but all of the NFL. If I'm a coach, I'm going to Buffalo before anybody else.
Now, when it comes to John Harbaugh, Kevin Stefanski, or Robert Saleh, to me, those are very exciting hires for each of those franchises individually. Any quick thoughts on those? Because I think a lot of teams are actually making the right moves. It's just about, when rubber meets the road, they actually have to get it done.
Yeah, obviously Harbaugh's a good move, solid, fits the New York Giant mold. But I think out of all those hires, Tom, Kevin Stefanski in Atlanta really has the opportunity to elevate this team, not just to an AFC South title, but I think they can make a run at a potential playoff. Now, what does he do with the quarterback situation? Obviously, Penix is coming off injury. He's been injury prone throughout his college career and NFL career, but there are weapons there. Bijan Robinson and that team have multiple weapons. Algier at running back. You have Kyle Pitts. You have Drake London. I mean, I'd be licking my chops. I think Stefanski in that offense could really elevate this team. And we saw this team under Ulbrich take the next step defensively. There are pieces in place for Atlanta. I'm not going to suggest they're a 14-win football team in year number one, but they could be eerily similar to what we see Seattle and Mike McDonald. I mean, the foundation is there for them to succeed.
Right. And the defense, I think, is the thing that they're going to hang their hat on because of the second half of the season, especially when we saw some of the primetime games for the Falcons, notably that game against the Rams. When the defense steps up, they can be in ball games. It's about the offense and the quarterback situation that they have to get figured out when it comes to the Falcons. Because to your point, the talent around the quarterback has been fantastic, as it has been for a couple of years at this point, with receiver, tight end, running backs. But figuring out the quarterback to make all of that move is going to be the most important thing. We're coming up against the break. We'll turn to some Super Bowl preview in the upcoming segments. We'll look at the lines, the total. There are some player props out there. There's also going to be a slew of exotic props out there. But stay tuned right here on SportsGrid. Pro Football Today will be back with myself, Tom Vecchio, and Joe Lisi. We have 2 weeks into the game, and we're starting the previews off nice and early. Stay tuned.
This is the fear that we had going on. And the players obviously were paid $10,000 to $30,000 per fix. But what this does is it hits at the core of the identity in the sport, especially in the modern day betting era.
College basketball today. Only on SportsGrid.
Basically, my co-host on Game Time Decisions, Josh Doan, is featured so much. And I also want to say this basically now confirms we are the premier Josh Doan network in all of sports media. No way no other show mentions Josh Doan as much as this one. Is that a success? Is that a failure? I don't know, but I think it's true.
Game Time Decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Meanwhile, Charlie Baker of the NCAA has planted his flag. He wants to see the end of prediction markets, and of course is a little bit nervous with all of the different stories that we've heard surrounding sports betting allegations of some folks being corrupt out there and maybe some point shaving. It does make some sense here. I just wonder which of the sports betting operators are going to stand with the NCAA.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
But I remember being 16 in high school, being in my school uniform, long pants and a tie, and I deadlifted 200 kgs, so that's 440 pounds. So yeah, so that was I actually have a video of it, so it might get leaked somewhere. Someone might be able to find that one.
We might need to get that one to B-roll the show in.
The Smiley Show. Only on SportsGrid.
We're live right here on SportsGrid Pro Football today. Joe, the Super Bowl is set. The Pats taking on the Seahawks. We have a 4.5-point spread in favor of the quote-unquote road Seahawks. We have a 45.5 over-under. Initial thoughts when it comes to at least just the line and the total?
Yeah, I think the 4.5 is legitimate when you just look at the performance now in back-to-back weeks for Sam Darnold, right? Only threw for 140 yards against San Francisco, but wasn't turnover prone, stepped up in back-to-back meetings now against the LA Rams, an explosive offense. And when he's pushed, he's answered the bell. So when you look at the quarterback comparison right now, and to what you brought up at the start of the show about how inconsistent Drake May and New England's passing attack has been, I think it's a legitimate number, 4.5. 46.5 to me is a little intriguing when we think about New England's inability to potentially score points in the playoffs outside the matchup against Houston, where, you know, CJ Stroud committed multiple turnovers. I thought it would be in the area, to be honest, about 43.5, 44.5, but 46.5 to me is a high number. I like the over early on.
Okay. Now, when it comes to either of these, do you expect any line movement? Because when I look at this, I would say if there's going to be any line movement, the first spot that I would be looking is the 4.5 moving to a 5 or 5.5 in favor of Seattle. I think the overwhelming sentiment that we see from the public perception is that the defense from Seattle is so strong and consistently throughout the playoffs, as I've said before, that Drake May is struggling versus good pass rushes. And that's what we saw from Seattle throughout the playoffs. That's what we saw from Seattle throughout the entirety of the regular season. They finished with a top 12 defense in terms of DVOA ever. Not just this season, not just over the past 5 years, ever. They had one of the best DVOA defenses from Seattle. So I would say the line can move to 5.5. Do you expect any line movement in a major way on either the spread or the total?
I do, but I expect it the opposite way, and I'll tell you why. So Seattle was the number 1 seed. They've had both playoff games at home. And when you talk about New England, they are battle-tested on the road, right? They are the first team to win 9 games on the road or on a neutral field in that type of environment. Has it been pretty? No. I'm not going to say it would suggest that it's been, eye-popping. But you can't take that away from New England, right? And now you still have Seattle on a neutral field against a team that has been a dominant road team. That's where I think you'll get some buyback in on New England, and we might see 4s or even 3.5s. prior to this game kicking off. It's almost similar to the line movement, I believe, in what we saw with Denver and New England, right? We saw 5.5s get up early, and then as we inch closer to kickoff, we saw those 3.5s creep into the market and get as low as 3 at a couple of books right before kickoff. That's what I'm suggesting. I also think that we might see this total at 46.5 maybe get down to 45.5 or a flat 45 across multiple books, because I think the mindset is, I don't think New England, or the perception is that Drake May and this offense could go toe-to-toe with how consistent JSN and Sam Darnold have been in the passing attack. So that's where I think the line will go. We'll see how it plays out. But I do feel that if you like New England, this potentially could be as high as we get prior to kickoff.
All right. Now, we do have props out for many of the players, if not all of them. When it comes to the passing market for the quarterbacks, Drake May sitting at 225, Sam Darnold sitting at 227, nearly identical on that. To me, this would be looking at a spot where, if I think New England is not going to be covering this game, I want to be looking at Drake May over. That's just an initial lean, and that's simply because he's going to be needing to throw the ball. It may not be efficient, it may not be pretty, but if they are in obvious passing situations, he could easily get to 230, 240 yards, even in a losing effort. So close numbers for both the quarterbacks, 225, 227. Any initial thoughts on those?
Yeah, I'm with you on Drake May, and I'll take it a step further. I think they need to have Drake May at that number. I think if they don't have Drake May anywhere near that total, I think they potentially get blown out, and it's an under in this matchup. Could look something like 27-13 in that aspect, just because, again, if they're going to look to go into this game, run the football between the tackles, Ramondre Stevenson, and not utilize Travion Henderson on the edge, they're going to get blown out. They're going to be put, to your point, in long third down situations. That means a pass rush for DeMarcus Lawrence getting on Drake May, and we know how turnover prone he's been when he's been pressured. So the mindset for this offensive staff, for Josh McDaniels, has to be more aggressive in the passing attack on first and second downs to open up the run. So I think Drake May, it's imperative he gets over that number, Tom.
It's a great point, and it's a great way to put it. You know, I think the easiest way to put it is if Drake May finishes with 189 yards, then the Pats lose this game going away. Like, Seattle is out in front. They're controlling everything from top to bottom. They shut down the run. They shut down the pass. And then, therefore, the Pats just don't stand a chance. The Pats need Drake May to have at least 230 yards if they're going to have a shot in this game. Because that ultimately, as we discussed before, would open up opportunities for Stevenson and Henderson in the backfield, where they can at least have some type of effectiveness in the run game. When it comes to the quarterback passing touchdowns, they're both sitting at 1.5, but we're seeing plus money on Drake May for over 1.5. That's at plus 120, and it's minus 114 for over 1.5 for Sam Darnold. Any thoughts there?
I'd take a shot on May. Again, they have to score points, and if I'm going in back in New England to be aggressive, that could be Drake May in the passing attack. Again, I'm playing the over, so it wouldn't shock me if I don't know if we get as high as LA, Seattle, but I think we can get into the low 50s in this matchup.
Absolutely. There's plenty more to discuss. My mind immediately goes to the touchdown scores market for the Super Bowl and the way that I would like to play it, as we see only two players at minus money odds. It would be Ken Walker minus 190, JSN, Jackson Smith, and Jigba at minus 110. But I'd be looking to Hunter Henry or Steph Diggs, either of them, to catch a touchdown pass. Hunter Henry is at plus 220. Steph Diggs is at plus 250. I would like to think if Drake May does throw at least one touchdown pass, one of those would come through. Any thoughts on those? Or a lot of plus money across the board, because Ramondre Stevenson is that next player at plus 155. Everyone else is plus money except for Walker and JSN.
Yeah, I mean, again, JSN has been a dominant red zone option for that offense. But Travion Henderson in the receiver, 5-1, Tom. It would be Travion Henderson and Hunter Henry. And Hunter Henry could be an option in the red zone.
We have plenty more to discuss. We're not going to be talking too much about Matt Collins, although that's an interesting option. But the receiving and rushing market, when it comes to prop perspective, we'll touch on that right here. Pro Football Today will be back.
This is the fear that we had going on. And the players obviously were paid $10,000 to $30,000 per fix. But what this does is it hits at the core of the identity in the sport, especially in the modern day betting era.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
Basically, my co-host on Game Time Decisions, Josh Doan, is featured so much. And I also want to say this basically now confirms we are the premier Josh Doan network in all of sports media. No way no other show mentions Josh Doan as much as this one. Is that a success? Is that a failure? I don't know, but I think it's true.
Game Time Decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Meanwhile, Charlie Baker of the NCAA has planted his flag. He wants to see the end of prediction markets, and of course is a little bit nervous with all of the different stories that we've heard surrounding sports betting allegations of some folks being corrupt out there and maybe some point shaving. It does make some sense here. I just wonder which of the sports betting operators are going to stand with the NCAA.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
But I remember being 16 in high school, being in my school uniform, long pants and a tie, and I deadlifted 200 kgs, so that's 440 pounds. So yeah, so that was I actually have a video of it, so it might get leaked somewhere. Someone might be able to find that one.
We might need to get that one to B-roll the show with.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
We're back right here, Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Down to the final segment. We're continuing to do a bit of a Super Bowl preview. The lines are out, the props are out. Obviously, this is a very exciting time as we see so many of the fun, exotic props across the sports book landscape. And we'll get into certain game specials. But right now, let's just stick to the main props that we have, Joe, at least from the traditional rushing and receiving. Ken Walker leads the way, 75.5. Ramondre Stevenson, 51.5. Henderson, your guy, bit of a drop off to him, only 17.5. To me, the Drake May number at 36.5 is the most interesting of these. I think the numbers are relatively spot on. We have seen Drake May go for 60 plus in 2 out of the 3 playoff games. And again, if the pass rush is getting there to Drake May and the offensive line issues that we have seen from the past, for him to take 5 sacks in each of the 3 playoff games, I think the awareness has to be on him to move out of the pocket quicker and get some yards. Any quick thoughts on this?
Yeah, and again, you saw him run against Denver, to extend plays. It doesn't shock me that maybe Darnold goes over his number as well in the Super Bowl. Again, when you have an opportunity to win a title and a championship, these quarterbacks could take it on to extend plays on critical third downs, to put their team in a position to kick a game-winning field goal or get points before the half. So I think it's all on the table for both Drake May and Sam Darnold in this game. And you saw that Drake May feels more comfortable running the football throughout the playoffs than he does maybe throwing it. So when you're going up against that front seven that has multiple strip sacks this year on their resume, they had 2 against Jacoby Brissett that they took to the house by DeMarcus Lawrence. You have to be cognizant as a quarterback to step up, and if they're playing man-to-man coverage, tuck it and run. So it's a good look for Drake May.
Now, when it comes to the receiving market, no surprise, JSN leads the way up at the top with 92.5 for his receiving over-under. Steph Diggs is there at 44.5. But to me, a play that I actually already tweeted out earlier today would be George Holani, the new second-string running back for Seattle, because Zach Charbonnet is down for the year with an ACL. George Holani over 7.5 receiving yards is one of my early looks for some props. He saw some good run yesterday, and frankly, the utilization that he has in the passing game is something that we have seen from Seattle, at least in the past few years that he's been there. So Barner's at 26.5, Hunter Henry's at 37.5, Cooper Kupp is at 30.5. Anyone catching your eye right now?
Yeah, it would be Shaheed again. To your point,
Okay.
and what we saw play out. I mean, they don't utilize him enough in the passing attack. He had 51 yards on one reception, and they went back to him one time on a slant pattern at the end of the game. They have to go to more utilizing Rashid Shaheed over the top to extend the offense, and more importantly, loosen up the front seven of New England. Again, New England's going to look to take away Kenneth Walker in this matchup. I don't think they utilize Kenneth Walker 90% of the touches the way they did against the LA Rams. You don't want to burn him out in the Super Bowl. I expect Kalani to have some burn in that matchup as well, but Barner could be another option underneath coverage. 26.5, I think, is doable. He's utilized in red zone opportunities. I don't think Bobo's going to get another red zone opportunity or look in the Super Bowl. We'll see how it plays out. But again, Kupp maybe underneath, possession type of guy trying to win the Super Bowl. He stepped up in the past. If Darnold has confidence in him, he might go to him for an anytime touchdown.
Yeah, I will say Rashid Shaheed, his receiving yards is sitting at 21.5, and his longest reception is sitting at 14.5. And frankly, Joe, this is what I like to call the double dip. He could get both of those done on one catch. He could go over 21.5 and over his longest reception, of course, which is 14.5. He could get those done on one catch for 25 plus yards, which again should be the effort for Seattle to utilize him in that way. Because if they have another consistent option in the passing game, then Seattle will open up everything else. I think the game plan, at least from a Pats perspective overall, would be they're going to try and neutralize JSN. They're going to try and neutralize Ken Walker. And they're going to say, let everyone else beat us. Let the backup running back, the backup tight ends, the other receivers, they'll try and beat us. And Sam Darnold has to do it on his own without those guys. Because if they can neutralize JSN and Ken Walker, then I think then it's even at that when it's all said and done.
That has to be the defensive mindset. If New England goes in and allows JSN to duplicate what he did against the LA Rams, they lose that game. They lose it, and they don't even cover the 4.5 point number. So again, you have to at least limit JSN targets-wise, limit him in chunk plays. But again, easier said than done. But I agree with you. Secondary options have to be the way to go in this matchup. So we'll see how it plays out.
There's 13 days until the Super Bowl. And of course, you'll find plenty of coverage right here on SportsGrid. We'll be breaking this all down from now, literally up until game time. The props, the line moves, the exotics, you name it, it'll all be right here on SportsGrid. Thanks for tuning in Pro Football Today with myself, Tom Vecchio, and Joe Lisi. Catch all the info you need for the Super Bowl right here on SportsGrid.
57% chance of winning a PGA Tour major? Would I be wrong by saying I want to invest in the no on Scotty Scheffler? And that $100 investment would pay back $213 here. Everybody thinks Scotty's going to win. It's like 100 golfers in those fields each and every week in the majors, the best golfers in the world. I'm going against the grain, Joe. Give me the no on Scotty Scheffler.
Prediction Markets Edge. Only on SportsGrid.
What is going on with this John Morant saga, right? Joe's on the block. Joe wants to be traded. But now Joe comes back and he denies all trade talk and says John says he has no desire to play elsewhere. So he shut it down. He's still viewed as a franchise centerpiece when on the floor. Memphis, they're better with him.
Pro Basketball Today. Only on SportsGrid.
The Buffalo Bills have to find a new head coach. Take a look at the leaders right now. A 33% chance Brian Dable takes that job. You say, well, why? Wait a second here. He's head coach of the New York Giants. Did you know he came from the Buffalo Bills and basically resurrected Josh Allen on that MVP trajectory while he was with the Buffalo Bills? Clay Kubiak, Joe Brady, Davis Webb, all offensive guys, which I agree with.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.